Judge your enemy based upon his capabilities, not what you perceive his intent to be. You have to look at the enemy and really, virtually every single time, make a worst case call. Now, I'm paraphrasing there. General Norman Schwarzkopf, he was one of the greatest military leaders this country ever had. Many have forgotten the name since, well, way back in 1990-91 when he led the first Gulf invasion. Some of you older folks might remember that. Norman Schwarzkopf was a strategic genius, but this wisdom holds. You have to judge your enemy based on what he could do, not on what your perception of what his current intent might be, because that could change at a moment's notice. Now, sure, a lot of people are like, okay, great, what does that have to do with anything? Almost going on 3 years ago now, I made the statement that Florida, the state of Florida, had moved so far away from the rest of the country that it was pretty much operating as its own country, taking its own direction. A lot of people pushed back and said, well, you'd have to legally do this and legally do that. You could have said the same thing to the colonists back during the Revolution, but long before the Revolution actually took place, they were governing themselves. In fact, if you want confirmation of this, go look at the list of grievances that the governing colonies had with the king. They had passed laws. They had stood up government. But at that time, because they were subjects of the king, those laws couldn't technically go into effect until he gave them his, what they called, assent. And many statements over and over and over again, the king was refusing to give assent to the laws that were being passed by the colonies that were governing themselves. Now, real quick, a lot of people took issue with my statement that the best choice we could have had going into 2024 was Governor Ron DeSantis, primarily because he's attended officers training in the military, and he understands enemy tactics: infiltration, distraction, confusion, deception, divide and conquer, and attrition. And he understands the Chinese very well. This is something that I think we're going to be missing in the next 4 years, and we have been missing for the last. Now, this is battlefield of the mind stuff. I have proof to back up exactly what I'm saying. Something that you won't get here reported anywhere. And that's really the key. It's not the news and what they're saying, one side versus the other. You have to look for the news that's not being reported and dig deep. Love to have you over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel, where we show the tactics and techniques of how to find this kind of stuff and bring it to light and why it's important. It's only $1 per month, even less if you sign up for an entire year. Fully refundable, nothing to lose, no questions asked, first 90 days. Love to have you over there. Now, let's get right to it. 3 minutes and 15 seconds in. Let's start here, over at RT. Chinese history buff buys Chinese military secrets for only 83 cents. The Ministry of State Security has reported the story of a retired man who helped it plug a security breach. Now, this is within China. A retired military history buff was caught by surprise when he purchased books that turned out to be classified Chinese documents. The materials had been sold for scrap instead of being destroyed. He found these books, and he thought they were really cool old military books, and then he saw some of the pages were marked secret and confidential. So he called the local ministry, and lo and behold, that was the case. Package of 30 kilograms netted the soldier 20 yuan, $2.75. Now, what does that have to do with anything with Florida, or knowing your enemy, or being separate from America? You ready for this? 5-minute read, 17 June, Monday, 2024. Quote, "They treating us like we spies. Florida property ban has Chinese citizens fuming." Now, this is the only place in North America where this exists. And it exists because of Governor Ron DeSantis. Period. You're not going to believe this story. 1 second. Okay, here we go. After his employer implemented a return to office policy last year, Jin Bian decided to cut down his 1-hour commute time by purchasing a house closer to office in Tampa, Florida. Then he was told the purchase might get him prison time. "This was really shocking to me. It just purchased property, Bian, who is originally from Nanjing, China, said. Once I learned that, I didn't even bother to look no more. Bian, a 31-year-old software engineer who has lived in the U.S. for 12 years, is on an H-1B visa, which allows companies to employ foreign workers for nearly a year. However, it has been a crime for him to purchase a home in Florida after the state's governor, Ron DeSantis, signed a law restricting Chinese nationals without U.S. green cards from purchasing property in the state. Bian and other Florida residents told CNN that the rules have fostered uneasiness and confusion among ethnic Chinese people living in the state. Some say the law has damaged their businesses, while others say they are considering abandoning Florida altogether. We hurt their feelings, apparently, and the law underscores the heightened tensions between the two biggest economies in the world in a U.S. presidential election. You see, it's not the two biggest economies. It's between Florida and China. The tension is between Florida and China. Bian said that lately he has begun reconsidering his life in Florida and wants to move, get this, he wants to move to the United States. He's reconsidering his life in Florida and wants to move to the United States. He isn't alone. Since Florida Senate Bill 264 went into effect on 1 July of last year, Chinese citizens without green cards face a felony charge and prison time if they purchase property in the state. Sellers and real estate agents can also be found liable under the law. We feel like we're different from everyone else because of this type of law. Under SB 264, it goes even farther. Citizens of Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and Syria are prohibited from buying property within 10 miles of any military installation or critical infrastructure facility. For Chinese citizens without the permanent right to live in the United States, specifically, the law goes a step further, barring the group from purchasing any property in the state. Now, it doesn't ban or prohibit people of Asian descent or Chinese descent who are U.S. citizens from buying anything. It's just foreigners. Foreigners. Florida is taking action to stand against the United States' greatest geopolitical threat, the Chinese Communist Party, DeSantis said in a statement last year. Law is being challenged in court. Florida's gone far beyond what is necessary, blah, blah, blah. All these people. But this is my point. Judge your enemy, China, based on their capabilities, not their intent. You see, those people want Governor Ron DeSantis and the people of Florida just to assume that they're always, as non-citizens of this country, going to have just honest and innocent intent with the purchase of their property and what they do with it. General Norman Schwarzkopf said, you have to look at the enemy and really make the worst case call every single time. Every single time. You can't trust people. Now, the Florida monkey, don't you think Trump is going to, don't you think Trump does? No. How do we know this? How many people did Donald Trump bring into his administration and they stab him in the back? How many? It was just one laundry list after another. Got this person in, he's going to do a great job, and we love him. And 3 weeks later, or a month later, oh my God, I can't believe he did this. I can't believe this person did this or did that or did the other. Or all this, it was over and over and over again, from Rex Tillerson to Mike Pence to all, I mean, you'd go down the list of bad judgment calls of people that Trump brought into his administration that weren't working in his best interest. He didn't have the ability to take the advice from Norman Schwarzkopf because he doesn't have the training that Governor Ron DeSantis does about how the enemy works, how they can infiltrate, how they can distract, how they can confuse and deceive and divide. How many different people was it? This is what I'm saying about Florida. We're different. It's a very different place, and history is going to remember it this way. We're eventually going to legally separate. But when historians talk about this, they're going to say, you know what? It really started back in 19. It really started back in 19 and 20. That's when the divorce really started. And by 24, operationally, Florida was an entirely different place than the rest of the country. I'm going to finish here at the end, and this is going to be the part that's going to blow your mind. The guy said that he's planning on moving to California, where he doesn't think that's going to happen. Here we go. Ready for this? Lee said she will likely leave Florida after her daughter goes off to college. Byun said he has hope that the law will be overturned, but if nothing has changed in a year or two, he plans to move back to the United States, to California. I don't think California will ever have this kind of law. Congratulations, Californians. People feel as if they're being treated as spies or agents of the Chinese government. You could be. Let me ask these people, do they speak for all Chinese nationals in Florida? Because if they don't, if they can't give us 100% absolute assurance that every single Chinese national who's not a citizen, who's in Florida, doesn't have some ulterior motive, then they need to shut up. Because they have nothing to lose. Plenty of places to stay in Florida without having to buy property. If you're not a citizen, if you're not from here. Plenty of places to rent. Without any issues. I'll say it again. Unless these whiners and criers over here on CNN talking about how unfair the law is, unless they can say that they affirmatively speak for every single Chinese national in Florida and their intent, they need to zip it. They need to zip it. And I'll leave it there. I'll leave you this link and you can read it for yourself. This is the reality that we're living in right now. Unless people are going to stand up and make the hard decisions and make the worst case calls, you're in trouble. God bless. Love to have you. Patreon would make a huge, huge difference in my life. I know we haven't gotten a video up in a couple weeks over there. God bless all of you for sticking around and hanging in there. I'm definitely working on one. I just want to get it right. The content over there is very different than the content here. It's got a lot more of a gritty, kind of in-your-face feel to it. And that's what Patreon's all about. So, once again, pray for each other. Pray for me, I'll pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. See you guys next time.